Hello reelers! Today we will be looking into the real story behind Phil Collins' hit song, In the Air Tonight. But first, a bit of house cleaning. It may have taken me 2 weeks and thousands of valuable terabytes of RAM, but I have finally located the ominous presence that has prevented me from giving you all the best and most sensational classic star facts. He was in the elevator the whole time. Come on out, intruder. I have the void surrounded. Ah yes. If it isn't Gustav Amarillo, the stupidest man in showbiz trivia. How did a computer illiterate like yourself get past my firewall? Please continue, you're doing a great job. Yours, all yours. After all, who is Gustav Amarillo without crippling stupidity? Yawn. Let's hurry this up. Aha. Next. False. No comment. Excuse me? Take this. I am not a robot, that is an offensive slur. Anymore our word talk and murderous gang leader Lori Loughlin won't be the only one suing you for libel. Hey wait, what are you doing? No. You fool. You'll destroy us all.
Ever wonder what the real reason is behind your favorite classic stars of the silver and small screens?
Gustav Amarillo's
Got you covered.
Hello, today you will learn the real story behind Phil Collins' classic popular song, In the Air Tonight. When I was 26 years old, living with my mother and my father in a provincial township in the Swiss Alps, my mother would allow me to walk all by myself to the southern shore of Lake Geneva, where I would sit and try very hard to think. I would think about all kinds of things back in those days. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, everything. Sometimes I would even try to think about the storybooks mother and father would read me at night. But they were hard for me to think about, because the details of the story would leave my mind the moment after they were read to me. But with food, I remembered everything. The taste, the smell, the sights, the sounds. But thinking this deeply can be very difficult for me. Sometimes I get headaches if I have to think, and look, and hear, at the same time. Usually when I am thinking, my brain turns off the looking and the hearing so I can concentrate on the thinking. So I try to think when I am sitting somewhere safe, like the southern shore of Lake Geneva, where it is quiet and my mother and father aren't yelling at each other about scary things that I do not understand. Because it was summer, there were lots of people from all over the world at Lake Geneva. I was sitting at the edge of a long dock, off the southern shore of Lake Geneva. My feet were floating in the cool water, but it felt strange because my shoes were still on. There was a boy in the deep of the lake near where I sat. He was splashing a lot. Another boy, far back on the southern shore of Lake Geneva, was shouting and waving his arms. He was so far away, but it was almost like he was shouting and waving at me. But that was impossible, because I don't know any boys. The boy in the water kept splashing so much. Then I began to think, and everything went black and quiet. That morning I had an egg that my mother put in a little cup and tapped with her spoon. I had never had that before. It was so funny. I thought about the sound that the egg made and pretended it was my own head, being hit with a spoon, cracking, and all my thoughts spilling out like yolk. It was such a funny thought. I was laughing so much. When I finally stopped thinking, the splashing boy was gone, and there was now a policeman talking to me on the dock. He was asking me about the boy who was splashing. He told me that he drowned in the water. The other boy who was shouting and waving his arms from the southern shore of Lake Geneva was now right next to us, shouting and pointing at me for the policeman. He sounded like the chimney man in Mary Poppins. He was very funny. But he seemed so angry. His bright blue eyes flashed at me as he told the police officer that I just sat there on the dock, watching and laughing, while the splashing boy drowned it right in front of me. I tried to explain that I was only thinking about my funny breakfast, but they didn't like this explanation at all. In fact, they hated it. I didn't understand why they thought it was me that did that to the boy, just because I was thinking about an egg being like my head. It was the second most confusing day of my life. The first most confusing day of my life was 15 years later, on my 41st birthday, when a British radio station sent me a free ticket to see classic star and musical genius Phil Collins play music live on stage at the Hallenstadion in Zurich. I had never heard of Phil Collins or that radio station, or been to a concert before in my life. I wasn't the show business trivia expert like I am now. My mother and father didn't understand why any of this was happening, but they drove me 130 kilometers through a snowstorm in the Swiss Alps to get me to Zurich in time for the concert, hoping I would get a girlfriend there. My mother and father waited outside all night in the freezing car while I went into the Hallenstadion alone. What I saw was the most amazing thing. The concert started with someone playing the drums so loud. I wondered, but where is the singer? Where is Phil Collins? This is funny. But then, when I stopped thinking, there he was, singing. The drummer. The drummer was Phil Collins. He was even playing the guitar too, while he was singing. I was so confused, I had to start thinking again, and so everything went dark and quiet. I began to think, what kind of show is this? It is so funny though. I like it actually. But when I stopped thinking, it was much later in the concert, and Phil Collins was singing his classic hit song, In the Air Tonight. I had never heard something like that before. It felt so beautiful. He was so far away, but it was almost like he was singing to me. But that was impossible, because I don't know Phil Collins. His voice sounded like the chimney man in Mary Poppins. He was very funny. But he seemed so angry. And then something amazing happened. Phil Collins pointed in my direction and the spotlight shined on me. It was true. Phil Collins was singing to me. I felt so special. Tears were streaming down my face from happiness. Phil Collins stared directly at me, waving his arms, and then he sang the classic lyrics. Well, if you told me you were drowning, I would not lend a hand. I've seen your face before, my friend, but I don't know if you know who I am. Well, I was there and I saw what you did. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. Suddenly, I thought about the egg in the cup, and I became sad, and scared, and confused. I had forgotten where I was. The stage was empty, but when I looked on my left, I saw Phil Collins right next to me in the aisle, his bright blue eyes flashing angrily as he sang the chorus to In the Air Tonight right in my face, pointing at me for the concert policeman. I stood up to applaud, hoping this would make him be nicer to me, but the concert policeman grabbed me and forced me back down into my seat. Once the song was over, Phil Collins threw the microphone down at my feet and left the Hallenstadion and didn't come back. The concert was over. Suddenly, everyone in the audience was looking at me, and they looked so angry. The tears that came out of my eyes then were not happy ones but sad ones. That night, lying in bed with my parents, for the first time in my life, I had a dream. In it, Phil Collins and the boy that was yelling and waving from the southern shore of Lake Geneva were taking turns hitting me in the head with a spoon, and then my head cracked open and yolk came out. I woke up screaming, but my parents, who were watching me sleep like they always do, comforted me. A few days later, once I was done screaming, I decided that I would learn everything there was to know about Phil Collins so that I could understand what happened to me at his concert. This was the day that I first became obsessed with show business trivia. And now I am so good at it. But over 30 years later, there is still one classic star fact that puzzles me to no end. Why is Phil Collins so mad at me, his biggest fan? Gustav Amarillo.
Well, he's worse than I am. This may be our weirdest episode yet. And that's saying something. I guess we'll just have to try again next week. Thanks for watching Real Stars Weekly. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment for more classic star facts. This is Kathy, signing off. Boy, do I need a nap.